Welcome to the Simon Says Video podcast. Now, I've got a really exciting episode. Today, I am talking to a long-term colleague. He's called another Simon. I have known him for decades, and he's a video producer and runs a company called Visual Culture based in Melbourne, Australia. He's produced tens of thousands of videos for businesses, and he's actually celebrating his 25th year in business. Congratulations, Simon. That's no mean feat. But today we're going to talk about video guidelines. You might not be familiar with the term, or what are video guidelines and why would I want to consider them for my business? Well, stay tuned because we're going to unpack why you need video guidelines for your business. Welcome to the Simon Says Video podcast with your host, me, Simon Banks, where we talk about all things video and how this powerful medium can help you grow your business. We focus on how you can get a return on any video content you create. We talk about strategy, production, content, distribution, marketing, how you can get visible, gain new leads, and get new clients. Simon, welcome to the show. For those who don't know you, can you just fill in a little bit about who you are and what kind of video content you produce?
Thanks, Simon. Thanks for having me. Very keen to talk about video guidelines. As you said, I've been in the industry now for 25 years. Started out as a junior graphic designer, and over those 25 years, been producing all types of video, from corporate training videos, social media videos, a lot of promotional videos and things like that. So video brand guidelines is definitely a hot topic, and something that I'm very keen to share my experience and advice on.
So let's talk about what are video brand guidelines. I don't know about you, Simon, but I've been working in the industry making business films for over 20 years, and I can count on one hand, probably less than one hand, how many times I've actually received from a business some video guidelines. They often send me their brand guidelines, but there's no video. So are you seeing the same experience? What are video guidelines, and talk about, why aren't businesses including them?
Yeah, well, video brand guidelines, again, we often get style guides and brand guidelines, but there's no mention of video in there. So essentially, video brand guidelines, effectively how you want to display your brand to your audience in your video content, so whether that's social media, whether it's internal comms. So one thing you definitely want from those video brand guidelines is it to be consistent with the existing style guide. And I know a lot of videographers and video producers that ask simply for a font or a logo from a client, and then they're dumped with the style guide. And unfortunately, a lot of video producers don't quite know how to go about extracting what they need to produce graphics and animations and things from that. So video brand guidelines are very specific to video, covers lots of things, which we'll go into a bit later on. Essentially, just making sure your brand is consistent across all different types of platforms.
I think that's the key point here is consistency of brand, especially if you're going to work with potentially multiple agencies who create video content for you. So you might be outsourcing to a hand video production company. You might be using internal resources as well. But it's really about consistency of brand, but it's also helping those who are producing video content outside your business actually what you want them to do or what the video should look like. I very rarely see video brand guidelines. So just let's talk about, what are the benefits of having a video brand guidelines for your business?
Yeah, well, number one, again, we've spoken about a consistency across all different platforms. Again, you've got print, you might have web. We just want to make sure video ties in with that brand consistency. The other thing is to make it easy for not only the client, even an agency, and the video producer to all be on the same page as to what needs to be designed, because often, especially these days, video content is being produced by a number of different people for the same business. So if you don't have video brand guidelines, you're going to get very different interpretations of your brand from whether it's your in-house team, or it could be, again, that big agency, or a video production house, all producing different types of video content. If there's no style guide, no video brand guideline, then consistency is pretty much going to go out the window. So you're going to get a very mixed messages for your audience.
But I mean, if a business gives you basically some web guidelines, they have brand guidelines, often include about, website. Is that good enough for video?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. A lot of video producers aren't necessarily designers, and yeah, I mentioned before they don't really know what to extract out of existing guidelines. So whether it's a web style guide or it's a print style guide, it's very different for video. So you've got to, again, you've probably got your staples with the logo, the font, and the brand colors. But yeah, it's just how to treat graphics on screen because again, video frames and video specifications, especially with all the different formats these days and distribution channels. Yeah, you've got to make sure you're consistent across there, and you just can't use what you would normally use in a print catalog or a web page.
Yeah, so I think that's unpack that a little bit. Yeah, I think we're often given sort of brand guidelines which include print and maybe web, but they certainly not necessarily actually work for video as well, because video obviously is a very different medium. So if you are considering or redoing your brand guidelines, we would ask please consider video. But what elements or what should be put into video guidelines?
So I guess we start off with what you want to see in the video brand guidelines is what I call the staples, which is the logo, the fonts, and the brand colors. And again, these are consistent across any style guide. So starting with logo, there's a lot of different ways that you can treat the logo. You could have it in different colors. You could maybe have it as solid black or solid white. And one thing, especially white space around a logo, you've got to be very careful of that. I've seen a lot of video producers just plonk the logo, on a textured background. Yeah, and one key thing that I've seen, and I'm sure frustrate all sorts of clients when they see their video and see the logo distorted. Unfortunately, a lot of video producers, again, I mentioned they're not designers, but they might unfortunately scale up or down, but only scale the horizontal plane. And yeah, you've got a distorted logo, which is not great. And yeah, it's guaranteed to frustrate clients and things like that. And when it comes to fonts, especially with print style guidelines, they'd like to use a lot of light typefaces or regular typefaces, whereas video, it's probably not going to show up as nicely. So yeah, you're probably looking at more bolder fonts for video content, and also just outlining what that specific size of the font should be. You don't want anything too small. I know disclaimers, even disclaimers have to have a certain font size to it. Making sure it stands out on the background as well. And then again, of course, you've got your brand colors. So you've got your primary colors, which we could use for transitions and other bits and pieces, lower thirds and things like that. And then secondary colors, which could be really helpful if you're doing animation work and things like that.
Now, I think the idea here, especially when it comes to what we call assets, when it comes to logos, colors, and fonts, is really to guide any video producer on how they should be used. Just don't leave them to their own devices and say, "Oh, that looks nice. We'll use that." And also, you got to understand that obviously from print to video is a very, very different again, and the way things will look on paper look very different on screen and even look different on video because of generally the different formats, which is why I guess we should consider formats obviously in video because there's so many different formats these days.
Yeah, that's right. So especially with social media, video content, we've just been doing projects very recently, lots of recipe videos for a client. And we have to produce those in square format. We have to do it in typical horizontal format, but of course vertical as well. So we have to consider all that. Now, a lot of video producers, they need these specific dimensions as well. So typically we would do it in HD format. There are clients that need 4K and just keeping up to date with what Facebook or TikTok or Instagram, what their specific dimensions are that they need for their video. So it's really good to list those out in your brand guidelines as well and just be really specific about what you need there.
Well, I think, we could get quite technical here with generally formats, and we could talk about frame rates and everything like that. So I think these are important to include, definitely important to include in video guidelines. So if you're not sure about, I don't understand what 1920 by 1080 means, or if it's square format, or 1 by 1, 916, 16:9, landscape vertical. I mean, these are all technical terms which actually any video agency will need to understand. What formats they need their videos produced in. So again, and look, if you're not sure about the technical side of what to include, obviously I suggest you have contact Simon or me, where we can help you, guide you through the different formats and what should be included. So we talked about graphics, talked about actual format of which, we could probably basically when you're editing and exporting. I mean, what else should we include in video guidelines?
Yeah, I think motion graphics is a big thing, and I've been working as started out as an editor, and I've been using a lot of motion graphics in all that time as well. And it's all really important. Again, we use the fonts, we use the logos and the colors to build these different motion graphic elements. So things like lower thirds, which are basically a name title which comes up with the person's role. You have a few different guides on how to format that, how to make that look good on screen, and the correct size and things like that. Transitions, they're always good to have transitions. Maybe it's a shade pool. The logo element is included in a transition. Another one is text callouts and the graphics on screen. So if you've got a full screen graph, I know a lot of people are used to having a PowerPoint template, but if you've got a video full screen template for graphics, you might have certain bullet points. Say it's a training video or something like that. And you could just have a format ready for those motion graphics to just how to treat those. So.
Yeah, talking of PowerPoint, I mean, I'm often received, here's a PowerPoint deck, just use that type of thing, and then just sort of follow the format of that. Is that possible? Is using PowerPoint? Can we use that in video?
Look, I'll be honest, I do use PowerPoint. I do often redesign the PowerPoints because, again, a lot of clients, they don't have the design skills, so I might just add some basic animation, which is text sliding in or photos fading in or animating in some way. So it's always like getting those slide decks and just repurposing them as needed. Again, that they're often fitting in with the overall brand style guide. So it's always good to get those PowerPoint decks and repurpose as we need. So.
Yeah, I think also it's looking at most business films that I make. Normally you would put a logo at the end as well. I mean, I think that's important to include. What style that should be as well.
Yeah, that's right, and a call to action. So if you want to put a web address or a contact phone number and maybe even your company's motto on that end screen. So it could even be a sound effect that you need to include when you have that little logo animation. So all these little things, it's nice to include in the brand guidelines.
Yeah, I had one client who actually gave me a video file which had the way they wanted the logo animated at the end and with the actual website address as well. And this is something I think is worth investing in, is actually creating a standard sort of end screen, if you want to call it, how you end your videos. And it's quite nice not just to have a static logo, but to potentially actually get someone to design it and actually animate it slightly so it looks a little bit more polished.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that brings us onto a great topic about actually having a media asset library within your business that you can easily forward on to any video producer, again, whether it's your in-house team, whether it's your agency or your video production team. A media asset library could have things like that end tag. It could have different logo animations depending on the style of video. Could have a template for lower thirds. So all the video producer needs to do is just retype the name and the role. There's all these different elements that you can have in your media asset library that, it's just going to be invaluable. And again, just make 100% sure that everything's consistent across all the video content you're producing.
Yeah, I think also you need to include media assets. You can actually have what we call B-roll. So you can have actually shots of your, business as well, your offices, your buildings, your products, your services, as well as a library, which also video producers can use to help actually tell your brand story.
Yeah, that's right, and that's become really popular, especially for us in the last year or two. Is developing that stock footage library, I guess you call it, for custom footage that again anyone can access and use for different purposes. And we talk about those live presentations of the PowerPoints, but some people just like to include some of those, create their own little edits and put those in their presentations. So just having that stock footage library is, it's really important. And we're getting a lot of requests for that type of work.
No, I think that they're really important actually, if you think about it, from a business point of view, you shoot once, use many times, and actually it'll actually save you money long term is to have a crew come in for half a day or a day to film all these shots for you, which then, you can control them. You can make sure that, if you're shooting inside offices, that they look good, looks clean, desks are tidy, all that sort of stuff. It's a nice sunny day, whatever it may be. And then therefore every time you create a video, you don't have to have a crew come back every time just to get new general shots of your business. So just something to think about. Actually, it's actually an investment, but actually will save you time and money in the long term.
Yeah, and important to add there that if you've got a professional crew coming out, they do have professional cameras and they use different camera codecs, and we run into a few issues with clients trying to upload gigabytes and gigabytes of footage of this raw footage. A great idea is when the video producer's gone out and filmed that content is to also request them to encode all that footage into a format that's friendly. So MP4 is a very popular format, for example. That means just anyone can get access to it on most computer systems and use it in their edit programs. But it's always a bit of an issue when you've got, again, those hundreds of gigabytes of raw footage that you can't actually watch because you don't have the right codec. So it might cost a little bit extra for the video producer to encode that footage, but it'd be well worth it in the long run. And as you said, you can just keep using that footage over and over for multiple purposes.
I think that my tip here for businesses, if you do having a video crew come in for a specific video that you're creating, and quite often we get asked to do, can you get some extra shots, which is great. So we do all that, but then normally the business never asks for them and never use them. So I would actually consider in any video brief you create is saying, look, you ask for additional filming, and then ask the video producer to actually export these sort of raw shots in a format which actually can be shared and used across multiple platforms. You mentioned MP4. MP4, that is a sort of a universal video codec. That's what I would ask for, and then just ask them to sort of upload them to a platform like Dropbox where you can download them. And for your business, whether you have an intranet or you have another platform where you can actually upload these assets and therefore you can share the link to other video producers in the future, then they're in a file format that not only professionals can use, but also your in-house team can use as well. So that's .mp4 is the preferred codec at the moment. But let's talk about exporting as well, because obviously, when we film videos, we often film them in 4K. They're very high quality, very large files. But, I think you need to be more specific when you're delivering or when you're asking for video files, that will work for you. So Simon, when it comes to actually exporting the video and actually receiving the video file to be used, what kind of format should be written into the video guidelines?
Well, the majority of what we export is MP4 format. Again, that's quite universal, whether it's on social media, your internal intranet, uploading to YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, all places like that. And essentially what we do when we press the export button on a particular video is we're giving a series of settings that we can extract the data rate to get it to a reasonable file size. Obviously, the longer the video, and the higher the quality you need for that distribution platform, it's going to be a higher file size. But again, some clients, they need file sizes that are well under 20 meg just to send out, whether it's an email link or something that they can share internally. So we just have to adjust the settings there. But MP4 is definitely the way to go for a lot of video platforms.
And I just think you should, just get some guidance from the video producer. Any video company, they will be checking any video they send you just to make sure it looks good. And in the age we live in now, the video quality that we can produce is extremely high. But I would personally, stick to HD. Don't worry about 4K at the moment, mainly because there's not many televisions that people can display 4K. And I think HD is extremely good quality and, is actually suitable for pretty much most business needs. And particularly if it's online, most people are actually watching on a small screen on a mobile or smart device, something like that. So we would recommend filming in 4K just to get the high quality. And then we generally edit, we would downsize it to what we call HD. So that's all very well that, we now delivered the video, but let's just take a step back into all about the actual filming. What kind of elements could you include in some video guidelines when it comes to actually shooting?
Yeah, it's interesting because, a lot like print, you get a print catalog in the mail and you can instantly, without even seeing a logo, which company it is. And the same should be said about, filming as well. So we could start off with interviews. I think that's a great place to start because, again, you might have multiple cameramen and, it might be spread across the world, and you need a consistent look for a particular video so everything matches perfectly. So if you've got specific guidelines about how to set up the framing, how to set up your lighting, even if, nice shallow depths, could even be something as simple as, do you want it locked off on a tripod, or do you want two cameras filming particular interviews? And a great thing to include in those guidelines is a few examples, a few stills from actual interviews.
I think including screenshots is really good, but also I think I would also create some links to actually a video that's recently been produced, of which you're really pleased about the look and the style of it, because that really gives any video producer the idea of how it actually, in terms of the movement, in terms of the talking heads, in talking the framing. I mean, these are all elements that should be considered, because ideally, if you're a big business and got multiple locations globally, you want to make sure that you have a consistent look and style, and video guidelines will help actually make sure that you do get some consistency. Otherwise, if you just leave it up to individual videographers or video agencies, you'll basically send it to an editor and it'll be all over the place. It'll look so different, and you'll spend a lot more time and money in post-production trying to make everyone look the same. So it's really important in the video guidelines to actually be very specific in terms of, what kind of framing you want, maybe even down to what kind of cameras that you prefer to be used. How do you want the interviews to look? Do you want to have the shadow depth of field behind you? What kind of lighting do you want? Do you want sort of something which is evenly lit, or do you want something a bit more stylish? I mean, these are all important considerations. What else would you add, Simon?
Yeah, and I guess when it comes to B-roll, overlay footage, again, it's having a particular style for that. So, again, do you want to go sort of more the handheld style, maybe in slow motion? You could ask the cameraman to film in a log profile, and again, that's easier for editors to calibrate and match up if they are using different cameras, if they're spread out across different places around the country or around the world. So,
I mean, we could also get quite technical here about actually, what format to actually shoot in. Should it be 4K? There's also talking about frame rates as well. So depending around the world, we do sort of shoot different frame rates. And again, you just mentioned what we talk about B-roll. So when we shoot B-roll, we tend to change the frame rate. We tend to shoot on 50 frames per second, which means that we can have the sort of slightly slow-mo effect as well. So these are all sort of things to consider. Now, I don't want to overwhelm listeners and those who are watching as well in terms of frame rates, because there's technical, we could talk about picture profiles as well, but these are all elements that you do need to put into your video guidelines, especially if you want to be consistent, if you're using multiple crews across the globe, across the country, wherever you are, is to make sure you have to be quite specific in terms of what format they're filming in, what the frame rate is, and what the picture profile is. Now, again, I would highly recommend you either talk to your current video person, agency or videographer, or even just, contact Simon or myself in terms of, I don't understand, but I see the importance of this help. And we're sure we'll be more than pleased to actually recommend what will work best for you. Now, let's move on to a little bit about actually, which is also very important, is actually about scripting. Okay, so what can we include in video guidelines when it comes to scripts?
So in a lot of style guides, you see tone of voice, and I guess that comes across in print and web and things like that. And it's really important in video, especially with scripting and developing dialogue and presentations and things like that. So tone of voice essentially is how do you want your business to be represented? So if you're a corporate, then perhaps you've got more of a serious tone. Perhaps you're in hospitality, you could be a fun brewery or something like that. So you could be a bit more lighthearted with your messaging and your tone. So it's really important to get that tone of voice right.
I think tone of voice really comes down to who your audience is as well. And sometimes the purpose of the video. So the tone of voice can actually change depending on what the purpose of the video is and for whom it's for. So obviously tone of voice can be very different if it's an internal corporation, internal corporate video. It could be more serious in a way, and you could use lots of what we call jargon. But then if you're creating a promo film or about us film, then maybe the tone of voice can be what we call a little bit lighter, a little bit more casual. So you got to think about whether it should be formal language or more casual filming. I think it's sort of really about the scripting, as we often see when we do a lot of talking heads and people have a script. It's a little tip here is that people tend to write on a Word document, so they tend to write to how you read, not to how you speak. So you've got to also think about tone in terms of, are you going to talk about first person? Is it I, or are you going to talk about we, or are we going to talk about you? Again, presence, as in, are you talking about future, current, or past? And these are also things to consider when it comes to scripting. Ideally, it really comes down to the audience and what you're talking about, but it is to be consistent and not to mix things up too much. That's potentially the tone. I mean, that's actually a voice in terms of a script, whether either it's someone talking to camera or you're doing interviews or whether you're using a voiceover. But it's another important consideration, which considered interesting that most businesses don't really think about until when you actually come to the post-production, and that is the use of music. Okay. And I always think music is so subjective. So what it would really help in video guidelines is to give the video producer a sort of a guide of what kind of music which would potentially would work for your business. And I think some guidance here would be really appreciated, because I know when I do editing, deliver a video to a client, it's generally the first thing they comment on is like, "Oh, I don't like the music." Okay, and I think, well, I quite like the music. I think it really works really well. But they go, "No, I don't like the music." So I think it's really important to some guidance, and also to give some examples of the type of music. Now, you don't have to use them, but it just, again, it's all about guiding the video agency, the producer, in terms of, actually, this is the kind of music that we like. So what kind of advice would you give when it comes to using music for business films?
Well, first off, again, we talked about the media asset library. It'd be great to include in this media asset library some music samples and give people a good idea of, just what sort of music suits your brand. So there's an endless amount of music options online now. We've got so many different royalty-free stock music sites that, I'm often visiting regularly. If you include some guidance, often with these music sites, you've got options about choosing the genre. So you can make it corporate, you can make it travel, lifestyle, things like that. You also can choose what mood you want that music to be. So, if you want it to be happy, lighthearted, maybe you want it to be upbeat or serious, again, you can choose all these different options. A good video producer will give you a few options. Maybe they'll add their favorite into the first video edit. If you're not 100% sure on that, then there'll be plenty of other options that they can provide to you and select from. But being an editor for 25 years, I know that's been one of the biggest headaches, is always finding the right music track to suit the brand. So the more guidance you can give up front in those brand guidelines, the easier it is to narrow down and find the right music track.
No, that's really great advice, Simon. Now, I think we've covered a lot here in terms of video guidelines. As a business, where would you recommend? Where would you start?
I think when it comes to video brand guidelines, it's not just a job that you can just hand over to one person, whether it's your internal marketing and branding team. I think you've got to, collaborate with a few different people. So again, your video producer, I'd also bring in an external designer, and again, your brand team. So just looking at it from different points of view, because again, video is just such a widely used platform now that it's just really important to get those different points of view and make sure everyone's on the same page and shares their ideas to make sure your brand is represented in the best way.
Now, I think if you've got existing brand guidelines, you can then, include this. I've often had video guidelines as a separate document, but I guess ideally what you can do is include it in your current brand guidelines as well. Most businesses actually review their brand guidelines every year or a couple of years. So, I would suggest and recommend that next time you're reviewing your brand guidelines, think about video. I mean, you can't ignore video anymore. As a business, you need to be creating video content. You need to be creating lots of video content. And as a business, I want to make sure that any video content you produce is actually mirroring your brand and your messaging. It's been great talking to you, Simon. I hope our listeners or those who are watching sort of understand that actually, we need to consider some video brands for our business. Now, if you're not sure where to start, I would reach out to either Simon or myself, or if you're working with a current video agency, ask them to help you, help them to spec out what needs to be included in video guidelines. But ultimately, you should be creating lots of video content for your business. We are in the 21st century. Video is here. It's not going anywhere. And, if you're serious about growing your business, you need to include video as well. But as you've been needing to create lots of video content, you want to make sure it is consistent in the way it looks, your brand, and your messaging. Thanks for joining me, Simon. For those who want to contact you, what's the best way to reach you?
Well, LinkedIn, I'm always active on LinkedIn and give lots of tips and advice there, especially on video brand guidelines, and a website, visualculture.com.au.
And also, Simon has kindly produced a downloadable guideline on what you should include in your video guidelines. I shall put a link in the show notes and in the description and in the comments. So, if you want to know more, download this guide. And if you've got any further questions, please feel free to reach out to Simon or myself. So thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to leave a review, to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and I shall see you in the next video.